Well, Dr. Wily, here we are again. I think it's about time for me to deal out with you for the 12th time in the classic Mega Man industries, not counting buddy forms of the Bandai Wonder Swan installment, but usually as far as it will get. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I am Mega Man here from the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my Let's Play of Mega Man 11 for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC Steam versions. So, last time we actually did manage to finish up with every single remainings of the Robot Masters, which are, you know, Bounce Man, Fuse Man, Tundra Man, Torch Man, and Blast Man. And today for this episode, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we are about to once again, we're going to be taken upon Dr. Wily's castle stages, and just like the forms of how it does it in Mega Man 9 and 10, especially with Mega Man 1 and 2 especially as well, there aren't any of those middle levels or anything like that, so we'll just have to jump straight into the forms of the Dr. Wily stages. So with that being said, I'm really looking forward to this though, because it's especially noticeable it's been about, of how the fact that compared to the forms of in Mega Man 10, that Wily's Fortress is actually gigantic, kind of think about it. So as you can see, the actual Wily Castle is going to be filled with gears, and you know the rest. So apparently there are about like 4 stages in this fortress this time around though, as opposed to how it does in the forms of I would say in Mega Man 10, they usually have ourselves the forms of only 5 stages, or sometimes but usually has like 3 of them, or sometimes, well, most notably 4 or 5 stages in between. Well, when it comes to the forms of the actual Mega Man titles in general, so yeah, let's get started right here by the forms of the first Dr. Wily's castle stage, and this is the forms of Wily stage 1, and this stage is going to be filled with all kinds of gears, kind of like how it did in Sonic Generations, except rather than time travel based, instead it was actually forms of something to do with the double gear system mechanic. So yeah, to get the idea with this particular point, and this is how the game starts to get pretty tricky sometimes, especially noticeable how the fact that, well, the easiest method to deal with this particular stage is the fact that that's how the double gear system comes into play, especially noticeable how the fact that if you really really want to upgrade your the forms of that specific chips and all that stuff, you must able to actually grind, or in this case farming rather, by the forms of those bolts you can get. And since I'm going to be playing this on the forms of Indra and Saturday, and if you couldn't tell already, today was actually forms of the 30th of what do I say October? I meant the 30th of December in 2018. So we've got 2 more days to go, folks, until the new year, in this case in 2019. And so far I'm really looking forward to that specific year, most notably by the forms of, not only by the forms of the upcoming films, most notably Toy Story 4, the Lego Movie 2, and How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, and especially noticeable in Disney remakes by the forms of, or in this case, Disney remake films like Dumbo and Aladdin, and especially The Lion King. Even though I might say this right now is the fact that I've heard from the forms of how the fact that the actual films, mainly by the forms of both the Jungle Book and especially noticeable in the forms of Beauty and the Beast remake, didn't exactly go for box office department, I don't think. Well, I may be wrong about that. Well, that's only because of how the fact that they just seem to think that the originals are slightly better. So, at least as far as I can think about that for the time. So yeah, with the forms of Wily Stage 1, as you can see, I'm going to be using my Acid Barrier. And let me tell you, Acid Barrier is the godsend when it comes to this stage. Because not only if you manage to stumble across the forms of a giant portion of the bottomless pit down below, while simply jumping from platform to platform on gears and all that stuff, it makes it so much more easier for you if you're able to defend yourself from projectiles, which is easily the most oh, oops. I did not expect that. But anyway, let's try this again. But yeah, you can able to defend yourself with the forms of that specific projectile, which is actually pretty handy indeed. If for those of you able, I still managed to get killed by these spikes. Oh jeez, what is this, like Mega Man 5 all over again when it comes to the Wily castle stages? But either way though, despite the fact that it makes it a little bit easier. I don't know how it usually compares it in the forms within superhero mode, but I'll try to demonstrate that for myself on my own time. So, oh god, disappearing blocks, welcome back my friend. But either way though, despite the fact that if you're able to actually not a big fan of these disappearing blocks, luckily Rush Jets were able to actually just help you out. And yes, speaking of Rush Jets, if you couldn't tell by the forms, I've actually picked up some health pickups, and especially noticeable with that I skipped over by the forms of the first disappearing block pattern section. You know, just like in Mega Man 4 and onwards, then it just takes you straight forward rather than just in any sort of directions. So, nothing too special, nothing too new here, but even then though, self-explanatory for the most part. So, and just like in the forms of how it does in Mega Man 4 and onwards, I'm pretty sure, well, in the forms of in Mega Man 5, that's the thing, the Rush Marine is no longer in existence because of, well, I'm quite surprised. Well, there is underwater sections in the forms of in the Acid Man stage, but somehow there aren't as many of those water sections, I don't think. But either way though, that's as far as I can usually cover it in mind. But anyways though, so let's take down this little sniper Joe here, in case if anything else will be able to be quite dumb, as far as I can usually just die from that specific point, although that won't able to be happening, but still. So anyways folks, almost to the first boss in the forms of in a Wily Castle stages. In this case, if I'd like to call it a gear fortress this time around, because, well, you know, this place is going to be filled with gears and everything. So, let's see what this first boss brings us. Oh no. Oh no. Please don't tell me it's a throwback to Mega Man 1, isn't it? Yep, what you would know it, Yellow freaking Devil is back for the third time. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you Yellow Devil once again, but this time around, in this game's case, it calls it Yellow Devil Mark III, because, get it? Because we've already had Yellow Devil from the first game, slash Mega Man Powered Up for the forms of the PSP, and even there is actually, we also have Yellow Devil Mark II in Mega Man 3, but now in Mega Man 11, we now have, you know, the Yellow Devil Mark III. So, it gets a little bit intensely crazy, especially noticeable as you can tell that I seem to almost getting wrecked by the forms of that specific Yellow Devil himself. But his weakness, luckily though, his weakness is actually forms of the actual Chain Blast. So even then though, you can able to actually just to create a massive explosion, especially if you're able to equip the power gear, because even then, it'll do so much damage, especially noticeable if you couldn't tell by that specific demonstration from the last video. So, that's pretty cool, worth noting for, but anyway. So just like in forms of how it does in Mega Man 7, and especially noticeable in Mega Man 8, and even in forms of Mega Man and Bass especially as well, you can able to actually just take a break for a few moments and able to actually just hit into the forms of not only you can able to save your game or your progress, but you can also able to actually just to go ahead and buy something from the forms of Dr. Light's lab for a bit. So yeah, kind of like how I did in the forms of in the, you know, Mega Man 7, 8, and especially Mega Man and Bass. So, which is pretty cool though. And also what's kind of weird is the fact that this might actually be the only Mega Man game you can able to actually just to go back into any of those Dr. Wily stages kind of thing about it, which is kind of weird because normally in the previous games you could just simply just go straight forward and you have to continue your progression. But in the forms of in Mega Man 11, well, you can just simply just pick at any levels at any point. Especially, you can actually go back into the forms of the normal Age Robot Master stage selection screen, which is kind of weird, but hey, at least as far as they usually can say for this right, but hey. Alright, so here we go with Dr. Wily Stage 2, and well, as soon as we're able to move on to the next room, or not for this specific room, but the next room after this, that we might actually introduce to a very similar mechanic as the forms of how it does it in Torchman stage, because, well, do you remember by the forms of in Torchman stage that we have to do with the forms of the instant death firewall, which, you know, that could be very confident, or in this case, very dangerous aggressively. And this is the main mechanic of the forms of how it does in the, well, in Wily Stage 2. But if you manage to equip your, speed gear, along with the forms, if you manage to actually access by the forms of that specific, equipment, or an upgrade by the forms, if you're able to now, perform normal speed of your walking animation, while you're able to simply, trying to pull up with the forms of the speed gear, well, you can now able to actually not to worry about this kinds of stuff anymore. Sure, there might be a little bit of occasional moments where how the fact that you might ended up in a trial and error situation, stuff like these sniper jokes will easily get in your way. But thankfully though, if you manage to use the the speed gear, you should be able to actually take them down no problem. So there are a few times though we need to be able to take down this little particular missile pillar, which thankfully though they can be easily be taken down by simply you have to like shot its eye first and then to its mouth, especially too. So yeah, it's very simple and self-explanatory kind of thing about it. Even therefore, that especially with the Thunderstorm, along with the forms of the power gear, is still pretty really good. In fact, I'll get to my final thoughts of the game once we're able to finish up the main game. So skadoosh! And in addition to those, well, we got another trophy right there from the start. So pretty easiest way to get trophies in this game actually, especially noticeable if you manage to discover something for yourself, then you should pretty much get yourself an excellent opportunity that you can able to actually just to do that. Whilst in the forms of how it does it in the, well, in the forms of in Mega Man Legacy Collections 1 and 2, in the forms of in every single classic Mega Man games, well, you have to simply obtain trophies or achievements rather by simply just beat the game for yourselves or anything like that. So yeah, nothing too much special about it, just, if you manage to accomplish those games, no problem, then you could able to achieve them. So, yeah, that's as far as it will go. So, anyway, I should probably establish that from this point and onwards, is the fact that this might actually be the only modern Mega Man game that Proto Man is nowhere to be seen in this game, including Bass as well. So, I'm not exactly sure if expecting there might be some DLC on its way. Although, it all depends though, really, because of, do you remember by the forms within Mega Man 9, especially with Mega Man 10, those two games does have DLC. By the forms within Mega Man 9, they have Proto Man, and in the forms within Mega Man 10 does have DLC that allows you to actually play as Bass. So, expecting there might be some extra playable characters in Mega Man 11 at some point. Or maybe they're actually trying to expand that in new forms within Mega Man 12, if depends if that's been announced yet. Well, it all depends, because, well, we'll figure that out as soon as we're able to actually just, finish up the main game first. So, yeah, you get the idea for this point. So, yeah, about the forms of how the fact that there are some other things that is worth mentioning, though, is the fact that I've recently got myself quite a number of items, as far as I've said this before from the 2 days ago, is the fact that I've already talked about some of these stuff I've got, but I haven't really mentioned about the rest. But in forms of the Nintendo 64 cartridge game I've got, there's the forms of F-Zero X. Now I know you guys are probably thinking about the fact that, dude, have you already got that on the Nintendo Wii's Virtual Console version, by the way? Well, the truth is because I feel like collecting those N64 cartridges is actually my kind of thing, by the forms of nostalgic reasons. And second of all, I think I probably should able to actually get every single F-Zero game points. Specifically, well, I've already got the F-Zero original game on the forms of the Nintendo Wii's Virtual Console version re-release, and especially noticeable with the forms of the actual built-in game on the forms even during the likes of the Super Nintendo Classic Mini. And also I've now finally got both the Nintendo Wii's Virtual Console version back in the day, and also I've now finally got the original cartridge-only version of F-Zero X now, and also I've got myself F-Zero GP Legend for the Game Boy Advance, and I've got F-Zero GX for the GameCube. So the only F-Zero game I need to get now is the forms of F-Zero Maximum Velocity for the usual Game Boy Advance. So, and then once that's been collected for my own hands, then I should able to actually play for the rest of the actual F-Zero series. So yeah, I should probably mention. Alright, here we go, folks. This is the forms of the next boss. In the forms of in the Gear Fortress boss fights. In this case, Dr. Wily's Castle 11, or anything like that. This one is actually known as Mawverne, which basically is kind of like you know, it's a bit like how it does it in one of the boss fights that you fight through. In the forms of in let's just say in Mega Man 6 or anything like that. They can able to actually just to use, or actually in Mega Man 5 actually, because, oh shoot. That was kind of my fault. I think it's pretty hard to predict for the forms of dodgy nose lasers sometimes, but either way though, let's try that again. So, his weakness on the other hand though, is definitely by the forms of the bounce ball, so that way you can able to deal the massive amount of damage with the forms of this particular guy. And you can able to actually use the speed gear as much as you want, but honestly I think I might be alright with this for now. But either way though, in order to actually deal with him though, is the fact that you need to able to let this hatch open, and then as soon as it closes back in, then you have to do the entire process and repeat the process again. So even then though, that as soon as this hatch opens, then it's your chance to able to actually just directly shoot the bounce ball right into its weak spot, and his weak spot is actually himself. So naturally, that's how essentially all this will go. Of course, dodging those lasers can be a little bit more easier than anything else, especially if you're able to stand on that one specific spot, and then you can able to actually just hop into another location to another. So yeah, that's a pretty welcoming addition for that. And I really do apologize by the forms of how the fact there's another reason why the fact that this was going to be originally going to be uploaded yesterday, but it turns out it was today, was you know, 30th of December. Because of this though, my microphone is once again going to be, well, glitchy fest. And by all means, it's the fact that, well, I did try to test out the forms of every single commentary process worked, but then turns out it was actually gone dead quiet. So, I'm not a big sound of that. So, anyways though, that's it for Wily Stage 2. And let's just go ahead and go back to Dr. Light's lab and purchase even more energy tanks. I would appreciate it if I was gonna go after by the forms of the actual weapon tank if I want to able to actually just to save up. But let's be honest, I think I should probably purchase the rest of extra lives for now. Because, I just don't know why I just truly say that. Plus, you're gonna be hearing Rolls gonna be saying like, "Are you sure? Ta-da! Are you sure? Ta-da! Are you sure? Ta-da!" Like a lot every single time you actually purchase one of those items, mainly by the forms of the actual chip upgrades, and especially with the normal items as well. So that can get kind of annoying at times, but nonetheless, it's not too much of a big of a deal. Alright, here we go folks, into the forms of Stage 3 in Gear Fortress, in this case Dr. Wily's Castle 11, and turns out that this stage might actually be a boss rush kind of thing, even by the forms of the rematch of Robot Masters. So even then, I suppose that since we already know about the actual Robot Master's weakness now, specifically by the forms of it like 7 out of 8, well, we've now finally know about the forms of the actual weakness of Blockman this time around, and that will have to be by the forms of Chain Blast, because you see why, since we're able to actually fight against with the forms of Blockman for a rematch. So first of all, we'll go through Tundra Man first, because, well, I was just picking a random order, and I thought I might as well do that, so... And since there's not much else I can really talk about from that specific point, technically speaking, there's actually quite a number of things that I've also got by the forms of, well, not only by the forms of another items that I've still managed to got, including my first ever PC game that I've ever got after about a long time ago, and that will have to be Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PC. I know it's a little bit of redundancy to able to actually get a PC version of Sonic Mega Collection Plus, because I've already got the PlayStation 2 version and the Xbox versions of that specific compilation. But now I've got the PC version, because why the heck not? And plus, in addition to that though, the price itself is actually in a bargain. Like, I got it for about £1, which, kind of think about it, it was actually pretty welcoming for me, especially noticeable because of how the fact that, well, in most old retro games nowadays, they usually cost about less because of second-hand condition. But on the other hand, though, I'm very pleased to the eye about that specific stuff. So anyway, so let's just move on to the forms of the next Robot Master right here. If you couldn't tell, I've already taken down Fuse Man. Now we're taking on Blockman for the forms of the second time, but now we have his weakness by the forms of Chain Blast. Because yes, it deals a ridiculous amount of damage right there. But whatever when he gets to this Power Gear mode, on the other hand though, well, assuming if you're able to actually just not to waste your weapon, if you manage to able to waste your weapon, like I almost did. So, yeah, I get a strong sense of feeling that I probably shouldn't just waste that as soon as the actual animation is about to be finished. But either way, though, that's it for his true form. And, of course, we couldn't even forget about the forms of the, that specific section. But anyway, yeah, I did try to able to actually access to the forms of Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PC for a download, while I did already install the game. But the problem with that is the fact that I seem to try to able to run it, but I need to get a special programmer to able to actually access to the game, which I think there might be same applies by the forms of in other titles as well, which can be a bit of a problematic for my part. But at least it's kind of cool for me to able to get another Sonic Mega Collection, but now I've got 4 of them. Well, technically the first one I've got is on the GameCube, but with less features and all that stuff. Well, unless the forms of the greatest parts about the GameCube version, which is actually, in my opinion, is one of the best versions of Sonic Mega Collections for me, because of my nostalgic memories of the forms of looking at some comics, and especially noticeable with the nostalgia movie clips and stuff, most notably by the forms of the opening and the ending sequences of Sonic CD, and the a montage to the forms of the history of Sonic, and especially noticeable with the forms of a teaser trailer, or in this case a game trailers, of both Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Even though it doesn't usually tell us by the forms of a trailer of Sonic Advance 1, because I can assure that Sonic Advance 1 has already came out on the Game Boy Advance that time, on 2002, so yeah, that's as far as I can say. So anyways though, enough about that, and there's also quite a few DVDs I've also managed to get, which are Star Wars Episode 3, The Revenge of the Sith, which may actually be one of the greater films of the original. Well, not so much in the original though, but in the forms of the prequel trilogy, I should say. And also by the forms of Batman Begins, for the forms of the first film of the Dark Knight trilogy. I guess the only film that needs left now is The Dark Knight Rises, which, either way though, I've heard by the forms of how the fact that, well, I think The Dark Knight is probably the best films of the entire trilogy, of the Dark Knight trilogy. At least as far as I've heard from the actual critics and fans alike. But anyways though, enough about this particular DVDs and stuff. And let's just get into the actual final points of what stuff that I've got. And that will have to be by the forms of my Nintendo eShop card, which now I've got myself not only by the forms of £25, but I've finally managed to claim myself the free download application of Photos with Mario application. Oh man, it's been so long since I've waiting for that specific application. Muscle Showcase often during the likes of at some point in our consoles review, but either way though, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, so. Anyways though, if you couldn't tell, the last Robot Master we're going to be taking on with the rematches matches department, and that will have to be Impact Man, so I just wanted to let you guys know. And what I found was kind of weird is the fact that, unlike in any other Mega Man game, that every time you actually defeat every single Robot Masters in a rematch variation, the health pickup is already there if you manage to defeat them. But this time in here, well, after when you take down the actual Robot Masters themselves, then the health pickup was already showed up in the middle part of the teleportation room, while there was actually the end level if you managed to take on all 8 of them. So, kind of weird though, but at least I'm used to it though. So, anyways though, speaking of such, with the actual 25 eShop cards I just spent on, I've managed to able to spend on by the forms of, first of all, I've got myself, speaking of Mega Man, I've got myself Mega Man Legacy Collection on my Nintendo 3DS. I know it's a little bit redundancy as well, but But either way though, just because of how the fact that, well, we've already got the actual Legacy collections on the PlayStation 4, which is a definitely superior way playing Mega Man game. But either way though, that's besides the point. And also, I've managed to spend on the Super Mario Land 2 6 golden coins on the 3DS eShop version this time around. Because, well, we figure we might actually do something with this particular Let's Plays and stuff like that in the future. And finally, we actually got ourselves all of the DLC packs in New Super Mario Bros. 2. So, expecting if New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe Let's Play will be on its way. Well, I'll ask Piglet if he decides they're able to show off every single DLC packs in New Super Mario Bros. 2 eventually. Mainly by the forms of, until before when New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe for the Switch version decides to come out. So, I think that might be a best way for Able to actually just to do that. So anyways, folks, here we go on to the true final stage in Mega Man 11. And we are apparently going to be on to these, onto these elevators first of all. And, yeah, we're actually now in Wily Stage 4. So in this case, the final stage of Mega Man 11. So, who knows, maybe we can able to actually fight something a little bit more intimidating as the forms of last time. And, unlike Mega Man 10, there is no, space physics this time around though. And especially noticeable, the actual, like, room itself wasn't go in a topsy-turvy scenario this time. So, instead we have to go for these little, elevator platforming sequences or something like that. So, yeah, that's as far as I can get. So, there are some occasional balls you can able to grab after killing certain amount of enemies. But if you think this level was over, well, it turns out there's an instant death spike wall, so jump off from that platform, and you instantly land for this specific point, and onwards to the next room, and we got ourselves the final boss in the game.
Ah, Mega Man, congratulations are in order. Congratulations to me, that is. My doppelganger did all the work.
Show yourself, Wily! I won't let you get away with all this!
Just try and stop me if you think you can. No mercy, Mega Man!
Alright, so here we go folks, this is the forms of the true final boss in Mega Man 11, and that will have to be Wily Machine 11. So, 11 machines is quite enough. No wonder how this is going to be brings it out from. Or else in the forms of in Mega Man and Base, it does not have a number-based system when it comes to like the forms of the Wily Machines kind of scenarios. So, but either way though, all you have to do in this particular boss fight as far as this boss fight is concerned, well, we need to deal with his weakness is the forms of the actual glass stone. Well, in order to actually attack him with the forms of a proper, insane amount of damage, is that you have to use the acid barrier, because that was, Wily Machine 11's weakness. And then as a result, if you deal a certain amount of damage, then you would potentially try to able to actually get a good chunks of, health down with that. So that's a pretty, good way for able to dealing with that. But if you think this boss fight was over, well, there is actually one more phase to deal with. So, and apparently this takes place in the, this weird-looking environment, but I digress. So, unlike in any of the Robot Masters, they only use one specific gear. Well, turns out Wily Machine 11 managed to use both, by the forms of the speed gear and the power gear. So, no matter what though, if you're expecting you would able to actually deal with him, no problem from there. Well, turns out that he's still not done with it for that specific attacks of one hand. So, again, his weakness is the forms of acid barrier, but on the other hand though, or in this case sadly though, I seem to run out of my ammo count with the forms of the acid barrier. So, I'm also able to try out different kinds of weapons to able to deal the amount of damage to the forms of Wily Machine 11. But on the other hand though, it might not deal as many damage compared to the forms of how it does it in acid barrier. But either way though, oh wow, that's a really good amount of damage to the forms of the power gear with the forms of, you know, Chain Blast, kind of think about it. But somehow sometimes though, I feel like the Chain Blast can get pretty slow sometimes, even by the forms of the normal sized bombs. But thankfully though, with the power gear equipped, it makes it a little bit more easier and satisfying to able to use. But either way though, that's essentially how this will go. No matter what though, I'm actually going to be using a Tundra Storm for last because I feel like a great way to able to use that for a specific point. But again, he only takes like one little bit of health down, but either way though, that was it. That was Mega Man 11, and that was it for Wily Machine 11. So, enjoy the ending.
Give up, Wily.
You leave me no choice. Time for Plan B. Spare me! I'm a helpless old man. Mercy, Mega Man.
Enough! You can't fool me that easily.
Drat! But don't act so cocky. I didn't lose to you. I lost to my own technology, my double gear. I'm the greatest. I'm a genius.
My, will you never learn from your mistakes?
Light! What are you doing here? You plagiarist!
Open your eyes, Wily. Look at Mega Man and tell me what you see.
All I see is the instrument of my downfall.
Mega Man wields tremendous power, but he has the intelligence to use it wisely. He's your vision and mine combined. If our ideas, our gears, could mesh together, Mega Man would be the result. We achieved this together. It's not too late, Albert. Atone for your crimes, and join me again.
Silence! My plans have only just begun, you fool! And I won't stop until I see both of you kneeling before me in utter defeat!
Hold it, Wily!
Remember this! Dr. Wily always strikes again! Farewell!
Wily!
My old friend, perhaps our gears will never mesh together.
Doctor, the fortress is collapsing!
Ah! I've been searching all over the place for you!
Ah, Otto! Did you succeed?
All good, Doc! But if you don't mind my saying so, I think it's about time we blew this joint!
Dr. Light, follow me!
So you get the idea, basically just like before, that the castle is about to be crumbled, and just like before, we've now somehow escaped by the forms of a rush jet. So, but either way though, that maybe seems the point for this point. So, this credit sequence does remind me of almost very similar to how it does in Sonic the Hedgehog 2's credit sequence or something, or perhaps maybe Sonic Pocket Adventure's credit sequence, even by the forms of the actual ending of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and Sonic Advance 1. But either way though, that might be seems the case. So yeah, that was it for Mega Man 11 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC Steam versions. I suppose I'll give my final thoughts of the game whilst the true credit sequence has been shown up. But either way though, I'm very glad that Mega Man is finally back in action after 8 years since Mega Man 10 came around. And I know for the fact that I was really hyped for the game. Well, I'm not going to include by the forms of, well, I'm not going to count, Mega Man Street Fighter crossover game, because it's more likely a fan game rather than the forms of the actual continuity of the forms of the actual Mega Man classic industries. But either way though, that might be besides the actual point right there. So, but obviously in this particular scene here is the fact that it shows us by the forms of the actual English and the Japanese voice cast in the forms of in Mega Man 11 itself, and yeah, they are pretty fine. Way more better than the forms of Mega Man 8, that's for sure, when it comes to the actual, like, hilariously laughable voice actor in the form, or the voice acting rather, in the forms of in Mega Man 8. So, yeah, I guess I'll give my final thoughts of the game. Overall, I actually really enjoyed this game, actually, kind of thinking about it, and I'm very, I said this before, that I'm very glad that Mega Man, as far as classic games in the actual series, I'm very glad the actual series has made its comeback again, and in addition with the forms of like bringing back the classic Mega Man game. But I think this game is actually pretty good, actually. Even though, let's just get to the forms of the actual positive things out of the way first. I think the visual style is actually remarkable even to this day, especially noticeable how the fact that rather than going back into the forms of the 8-bit style of Mega Man games, unlike the likes of how it does in Mega Man 9 and 10, but you know, it's just a 2.5D dimensions this time around though, which I appreciate. And it looks absolutely gorgeous, even with almost like a shell shading look, and especially noticeable how the fact that if you ever play this on the HD consoles, most notably the Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, PC, Steam, and especially PlayStation 4, it runs in 60 frames per second, and oh man, it runs beautifully. And that's how, well, I don't know about the forms of how it does it in Mighty No. 9. In fact, the visual style in this game looks absolutely good, even way more up there by the forms of Mighty No. 9. I've heard of Mighty No. 9 before, but I haven't really played that, and there's a reason why I prefer Mega Man 11 over Mighty No. 9, just because, and I've heard from several rumors out there of the forms within Mighty No. 9 is that the Wii U version is considerably the worst of the bunch because of, you know, just like in that terrible Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, it might actually crash the game, and some technical difficulties, mainly by the forms of how the fact that it lacks polish, and especially noticeable with a plethora of glitches and all that stuff, or questionable game design choices, which I still despise the most with that freaking terrible Sonic Boom. I'm sorry, it's just, I just still despise that game so much. But anyways though, that's how it should be done in the rest of Mighty No. 9 actually, with the visual style like this, even then. Because of that though, but either way though, that game already came out in during two years ago now, so, but it still really disappoints me with Mighty No. 9. But I digress. And the story is very simple for the most part though, even though what I found is kind of amusing is the fact that they now showed us a backstory of the forms of how Dr. Light and Dr. Wily managed to become younger that time. So yeah, that's a pretty cool touch in the forms of the actual opening cutscene. And the gameplay itself is very similar to the forms of the usual classic Mega Man games, and I'm glad that the forms of the charge shots and the sliding abilities has now made their return after, you know, Mega Man 9 and 10's absence. But I'm very glad that those abilities makes a return now. The Robot Master's weapons themselves are very sweet and pretty solid as well. Even my favorite weapon selection next to the forms of Mega Man 9. Like, I like every single weapons of the game. The only one exception that I can think of is Chain Blast for without any gears equipped. Unless if you, well, the double gear system on the other hand, when it comes to Mega Man 11's main mechanic itself, this is easily the best feature of the forms within Mega Man 11 because it's not only able to actually just manage to make the flow of the gameplay a lot more fun, but it makes every single, like, bosses, especially with enemy encounters and even actual obstacles and stages, makes it a little bit more easier to able to actually just to try to able to compensate from. And yeah, and the soundtrack is very, very phenomenal as well, just like in any other classic Mega Man game. And the controls, oh man, controls is super solid. Especially noticeable is on the PlayStation 4, the DualShock 4 is actually really, really comfortable to hold, even by the forms of the directional pad's usage. Because in this though, this is played in a 2D-dimensional look. So even then though, that I'm very glad that I've now managed to get the PlayStation 4 version because there's definitely a better way playing it, especially noticeable compared to the forms of the Switch version, by the forms of the, you know, the separate buttons, by the forms of the directional pads and stuff. But either way though, very fantastic looking game, and you should definitely recommend it, playing it, and you should probably get it now on the forms of the PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PC. And I've heard that the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One version and North American exclusive for the Switch version does have a physical version. So yeah, that's about it, and there's no two negative things about it, so yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it's a great looking game altogether. And for the final shot for this credit sequence, it's just myself, just jump over whatever that is, and just run back.
Mega Man reporting home.
Right on time, Mega!
Presents by Capcom. Once again, Capcom, you are nailed it in almost every single way.
At the rate we're going, we should have all 8 robots back on their feet by dinner time.
Doctor, did you install Mega's double gear system into auto?
I did. I'll remove it later, of course, just as soon as Otto's done working.
So this is why you came all the way to the Gear Fortress.
Yes. We were able to recover all their primary components, so they should be just like new. It would be a shame to let their talents go to waste when there's still so much good they can do.
Isn't this great, Mega?
You bet.
Otto, you're slowing down. Why don't you pick up the pace?
If I go any faster, you'll be picking up my pieces.
So yeah, that was it for Mega Man 11. If we don't know if Mega Man 12 will be on its way, but we'll see what happens there. So this is me, Mega Man, from the likes of the Maxi Toys. So until then I'll see you guys in a new year, in 2019. It's kind of weird to actually have 2 trophies kind of thing about it, which is kind of nice. So see you.